Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood is one of the most underrated steel coasters in my opinion. Almost everyone agrees this ride is excellent. But this coaster really should find its way on a more top 10 lists. The coaster's that good. And I was guilty of underrating Phantom's Revenge in the past. In previous visits, I only got 2 or 3 rides in Phantom due to a myriad of factors, so I sort of forgot how good this coaster was. But this past summer, I spent 2.5 days at Kennywood riding Phantom almost a dozen times. So I now have a clear picture why this coaster is such an amazing ride. It has some incredible airtime, very minimalistic restraints, and one of the most unique settings of any coaster. But before delving into Phantom's Revenge, I first need to talk about the ride that preceded it, Steel Phantom. In the late 1980s, Kennywood wanted a large steel coaster, and they were enamored by Magnum XL 200, the hypercoaster added at Cedar Point roughly 3 hours away. But there was physically no way to fit a conventional out-and-back hypercoaster layout into such a small park like Kennywood. But Kennywood and Aerodynamics found a way to steal the record for the fastest roller coaster with Steel Phantom. Opening in 1991, Steel Phantom stood only 160 feet tall, but it featured a record-breaking 225-foot drop, reaching speeds of 80 miles per hour. In order to have a drop that large, Aero had to use a very unorthodox layout. Steel Phantom's largest drop was actually the second one, as it dropped down a ravine and rocketed through Thunderbolt. But Steel Phantom had a flaw. It was an Aero looper. Most coasters standing 200 plus feet height progressed through a layout focused on camelbacks and airtime hills. Steel Phantom instead had 4 inversions after the big drop: a vertical loop, a bat wing, and a corkscrew. Aero loopers are not known for their smoothness, and the issue was exasperated on Steel Phantom because of how fast the coaster tore through the layout. Kennywood even added trim brakes before the inversions, but the ride was still quite rough and uncomfortable by all accounts. This ultimately led Kennywood to announcing in 2000 that Steel Phantom would be replaced. It seemed crazy the park would be replacing their signature attraction less than a decade after it was built. Reception to this decision was mixed, as was the reception of Steel Phantom in general. Everyone loved the start of Steel Phantom, particularly the signature drop down the ravine, but the second half was unbearable. That led Kennywood to teaming up with Morgan to redesign Steel Phantom into Phantom's Revenge. And while I never rode the original Steel Phantom, I think the park made a wise decision. The loops would be removed and the ride would be converted into a more conventional hypercoaster, although conventional is debatable because this is still one of the most bizarre hypercoasters in existence. While most hypercoasters follow their largest drop with a series of camelbacks, each smaller than the last, Phantom's Revenge did not have space for this. Rather, Phantom's Revenge rockets out of the ravine and hauls over a series of bunny hills circling around the park's pre-existing attractions. And yes, I think Steel Phantom and Phantom's Revenge were both hypercoasters. I know there was a lot of debate among enthusiasts if Orion counted as a gigacoaster, since the height was only 287 feet, and only the drop was 300 feet tall. But I consider rides gigas or hypers based on their maximum height or drop, whichever is larger. So for Phantom, I look at the 228-foot drop, which comfortably makes it a hypercoaster. 228-foot drop? Didn't I say the drop was 225 feet earlier? Yes, I did. When Steel Phantom was converted into Phantom's Revenge, the ride's famous second drop was actually extended, so it dropped an extra 3 feet. This also increased the ride speed by 5 miles per hour to 85 miles per hour. But even more impressive than the height of the second drop is the ride's overall change in elevation. Kennywood has never officially released this stat, but I'd estimate the change in elevation from the top of the 160-foot lift to the bottom of the 228-foot drop is in the ballpark of 260 to 270 feet. Remember, Phantom's Revenge has to clear the second hill, which I'd estimate is 30 to 40 feet smaller than the first hill. So that's how you get such an extreme change in elevation. If you compared Phantom's change in elevation to the heights of other coasters out there, Phantom's Revenge would still be the 9th tallest coaster in North America, which is extremely impressive. One of the other key changes when the ride was converted to Phantom's Revenge were the restraints. Kennywood wanted to save costs by reusing Steel Phantom's old trains, but they realized Steel Phantom's over-the-shoulder restraints had to go. They would inhibit the airtime, and they were the root cause of the headbanging of Steel Phantom. Morgan came up with an ingenious solution. to retrofit the trains with these lap bars that swivel from the side. And I have never gotten so much room on a mega coaster ever, and I doubt any other mega coaster will ever top Phantom's Revenge in this category. Since the restraints swivel down as opposed to lowering, I usually have a few inches of room between my lap and the restraints, which is insane to think about when you realize just how powerful and sustained the airtime is in Phantom's Revenge. I owe my life entirely to that seatbelt. Those restraints combined with Morgan's excellent track work leads to a glass smooth ride, which is something even Steel Phantom's most ardent fans could not say. Before progressing through the coaster's elements, there are a few additional operational items I need to discuss. The staff at Kennywood dispatches the trains very quickly. Phantom's Revenge is one of those rare coasters that doesn't have air gates, and I'd be hard-pressed to name another hypercoaster without them. This, combined with the unobtrusive restraints, leads to lightning-fast dispatches. However, Kennywood has a nasty habit of running just one train on Phantom's Revenge. So while dispatches are fast, Phantom's Revenge still doesn't have the best capacity because of the painstakingly slow lift hill. The lift takes almost a minute to ascend. I suspect Phantom's Revenge also delivers amazing night rides. However, I have never been able to get one. Kennywood is one of those parks that closes off the queue lines well before closing, so the last train is sent off before the official closing time. Last but not least, let's talk about seat selection. For me, Phantom's Revenge needs to be experienced in the back row. That is where you get to experience the second drop at its best. Plus, the airtime in the second half feels stronger at points. Up front, you do have the added rush of wind in your face, but the sense of speed is incredible in every row, so that isn't as big of a factor for me. Plus, the line for the front is usually pretty lengthy, especially if the park is running just one train. After ascending the 160-foot lift at the pace of a snail, you dive to the right down this twisting first drop. If you're in the back, you are absolutely thrown over this hill. You only get a tiny pop of airtime, but you are treated to some very abrupt and strong laterals. If you're up front, the laterals build up more gradually, but they're equally as strong once they reach their peak. The pullout from this drop is very tight, and the result is some extremely strong and sustained positive Gs. Those powerful Gs combined with the great speed are enough to make me forgive that brief straight track that follows. The train then ascends the second hill. Up front, you get some nice floater airtime atop this hill. You then bank to the right, and then it's time for one of the best elements in any coaster, the legendary second drop down the ravine. First off, the view atop this hill is incredible. You can see for miles since Phantom's Revenge is perched atop the ravine. You can see a river, a steel mill, and the surrounding towns off in the distance. But there is one thing you cannot see, and that's the bottom of the drop. That's for 3 reasons: the sheer length of the drop, the fact the ravine is heavily wooded, and because of the wicked head chopper with Thunderbolt. The latter is arguably the best head chopper on any coaster. The cutout in Thunderbolt's structure looks way too small, and it's extra effective because you rocket through it at the ride's max speed. Back to the drop, it's incredible. The drop feels like it lasts forever, sort of similar to how long the B&M Giga drops feel. If you're in the back, you get some sustained ejector airtime on the first half of this drop. The second half of this drop offered a weird sensation. Because Thunderbolt is still blocking the bottom of the drop from view, and the same angle of descent is held for such a long time, the second half of Phantom's drop causes my stomach to drop. The sensation felt similar to a drop tower, and I know it's a really bizarre way to explain a drop on a coaster. The bottom of this drop has a ridiculously tight pullout, so you are pummeled with positive Gs. This pullout also gently banks to the left, so it offers some mild laterals in combination with those positive Gs. And the sense of speed in this section of the ride is as good as any coaster. 85 miles per hour feels pretty darn fast on its own, but it feels even faster considering you're boxed in by the wooded ravine on all sides. You then fly around a large overbank, and this overbank caused me a gray out on every single ride because of how drawn out it is. And because this turnaround isn't banked as highly as an overbank on some of the Intamin mega coasters, you get some great laterals through the element as well. Usually I gray out on pullouts or vertical loops, so it was really neat to experience laterals while graying out at the same time. After the overbank, you drop back down into the ravine, and you are slammed back into your seat. The positive G's are crushing on this pullout. Phantom then pierces Thunderbolt yet again and ascends back up the ravine. And the way you climb out of the ravine is this really oddly profiled element. The ascent starts off steeply. The ride then levels off and transitions into a long, drawn-out curve that speeds around the turtle. But the point where Fam's Revenge levels off delivers a ton of sustained floater airtime in every row. The rest of the curve offers no laterals or force, but the visuals of the midway down below are exciting, and it sets you up for the incredible finale. Remember, the restraints on Fam's Revenge are very minimalistic, and they do not come down during the ride. The finale starts with this little dip that delivers some insanely powerful ejector airtime in the back. It's the strongest airtime on the entire ride, and it's borderline violent when you consider how far you come out of your seat and then slam back down into the train. Towards the front, the airtime is still a strong ejector airtime, but it didn't quite have the same oomph as the back row. That's followed by another drop alongside the station that offers sustained ejector airtime in every single row. You then fly under the brake run and traverse a double down. And this double down offers two great spots of ejector airtime back to back. You barely have time to return to your seat in between airtime moments. It's truly incredible and feels completely out of control. You then whip around a turn that used to offer some great visuals of the now removed pitfall drop tower before speeding over another bunny hill. Up front, you get another dose of sustained ejector airtime in this hill. Towards the back, the airtime is more of the flagector variety, but it's still very sustained. And the reason the airtime is a bit weaker towards the back is that the front of the train has actually started to hit the brakes when you're going down this drop. You see, Fam's Revenge has an extremely short brake run. I think it's a borderline miracle this thing can stop before the station. As a result, there are actually brake fins on the ascent leading into the brake run that start slowing you down. If you're up front, you still get a powerful pop of airtime entering into the brake run, but if you're in the back, you get no airtime here. In fact, it feels like you won't even make it back to the station, since the train has almost come to a full stop by the time you finally climb onto the brake run. One of the most admirable aspects about Fam's Revenge is the fact that the experience is very consistent seat to seat. While a few elements are better towards the front or back, most elements feel identical, which is great if you don't want to wait for a specific row, or if Kennywood is assigning seats like they were in 2020 due to the pandemic. Another thing I want to address with Fam's Revenge is the length. Yes, the ride is short for a hypercoaster. It only has 3,200 feet of track, while most other hypercoasters have an extra 1,500 to 2,000 feet of track. However, Fam's Revenge has incredible pacing and really no dead spots. And understanding Kennywood's land situation, there really isn't anything else Kennywood could have done unless they wanted to remove way more attractions. So while it is shorter than other hypercoasters, Fam's Revenge still feels like a complete ride and every element is top notch. So what would I rate Phantom's Revenge? If it wasn't obvious, I'm giving this coaster a perfect 10 out of 10. Phantom's Revenge is the complete package. The coaster has an amazing setting. It's the rare mega coaster that's also a terrain coaster. And beyond the excellent use of the ravine, you have some amazing visuals as Fam's Revenge whizzes over and past the midways. And the airtime is absolutely insane. The airtime on its own is among the strongest and most sustained of any coaster, so when you combine the strength of that airtime with the minimalistic restraints, you have some of the best airtime of any coaster in my opinion. Plus, you have the very underrated positive G-forces and laterals in the first half, an incredible sense of speed, and a glass-smooth ride. Fam's Revenge reminded me how good it was in 2020, and I think it made its way back into my top 5 steel coaster list, and it will be hard to knock it down. So those are my thoughts on Fam's Revenge, the unique mega coaster at Kennywood. Are you a fan of this coaster, or do you have memories of the old Steel Phantom? I would love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a like and consider subscribing because there'll be a lot more amusement park and roller coaster videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.